Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Christine Dixon of The Ordinary Sacred, and I am doing an IFS Q&A today. I get wonderful questions in my DMs and in the Ordinary Sacred IFS community in the private Facebook group, which anyone's welcome to join if you'd like to join that, if you're not a part of that already. But I get wonderful questions from people, and I just feel like so many people can benefit from the answers. So I wanted to share one with you today, which is essentially the question of what if I have victim parts, parts that have a really hard time healing because they don't want to release their anger, their resentment, their victimhood from a person perhaps that has perpetrated against them. So, great question. I'm going to share the little exchange that I had with the person who asked this question. So, let me make myself bigger just so you can see me. Okay. So, this person asked, they said, "Hi, Christine, you might have videos on this already, but is it possible to do one on parts of us that don't want to heal, or victim parts who are very persistent and don't want to let go of anger or resentment?" This is a great question, very common experience. So I said, that's a great idea. Thank you. I do know that self will not have an urgency or an agenda for them to do so, to quote unquote heal or let go of their anger, resentment. But self will spend time witnessing and validating their existence and their experience until they are ready to drop their burdens in their own time. The self never forces its way at all. It tries to understand what blocks the way for the part. So I said the parts who feel like the victimized part must drop their resentment. So the parts who are telling the victimized part, you need to drop this resentment, you need to heal to be, I don't know what they're saying, a better person, uh, a good person. Those parts might be the ones to work with first. The parts who are trying, they might be self-like parts, right? They just really want healing to take place. So they have good intention. But any part that has an agenda or an urgency like that is not self. And so you might want to turn toward those parts and get to know them first so that they can relax and let yourself, um, your actual capital S self interact. So this person said, "Oh, interesting. Thank you." So we can't rush our parts to let go, in other words. That's right. They will naturally do this as we validate and witness them. Is there a chance they'll just always be there? Good question. And uh, yes, the self will not rush the parts. Like I said, some self-like parts, managing parts might do that. And it's ironic because it's really convincing them that the quickest way is actually to relax and listen to the parts rather than forcing anything. So I said the part, because they asked, is there a chance they will always be there? So I said, well, the parts will always be there. We're never trying to get rid of parts, but their burden, the resentment, for example, will not always be there. So I suggested you might ask the part, this part they're calling the victim, ask that part what they are afraid would happen if they released the resentment. And again, you just ask this question and wait for an answer directly if you're feeling genuinely open and curious. You know, what would happen if you release this resentment? And I said, for example, they might say that they think you'll get hurt again by that person. Like if I don't feel this resentment and this anger, they're going to hurt us again, or perhaps by another person in a similar way. I went on to say, I guarantee that these parts are holding on to it, the resentment or the anger or their victim status for a reason. And once yourself meets their concerns, For example, healthy boundaries or distance are in place so that the person that they are holding the resentment toward cannot hurt you again, or the part is updated that you are safe now. Once those concerns are met, they will naturally be able to release their burden. This person said, wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much for taking the time to share this. It is so helpful. All right. So I hope that was helpful to you as well. Um, if you find that you have a sense of urgency, I've got to heal, um, these parts need to let go of their burden, but they won't, they're not, and there's kind of distress about that. You can be sure that there is another part that's feeling the distress. And so you might want to turn toward that part first. And it makes sense, right? It can feel distressing. The parts that hold the anger and resentment might be very young. They might act out and do things that have repercussion on you, right? So the parts who want them desperately to let go of that and for your system to heal and balance make complete sense. So you would want to turn toward those first and say, I appreciate you. So this is the unblending, the recognition that maybe there have been self-like parts who've been interacting actually with the part holding resentment. And that's another reason why they don't want to let it go, because they're not actually working with self, who has no agenda and is very patient and gentle and curious and wants to hear their experience. So you want to turn toward the self-like parts first, appreciate them. The self who sees both of these sets of polarized parts can appreciate them both, can truly say, I get you. It is really hard. I see that you want us to heal. Thank you for that. Can you relax though and let me and see if they can see you and see who you are? You might ask them, who do you see when you look at me? Or how old do you think I am? So that they will see your true self, which is a bright light of loving energy, and that is bigger than even the parts who hold the resentment and the anger. And so if they see you, they, these managing parts who hold the urgency and the agenda, can relax and then allow you, who is not a part, who genuinely feels love and compassion and curiosity toward the victim parts. Now you can go toward them. And the self doesn't have an agenda for them to heal, even. The self just knows that in the loving presence of self, the parts will organically, naturally be able to release their burdens in their own time when they're ready. And so the self can say, I know you make sense. If you continue to hold on to this resentment, it's for a reason. So I'm just going to get curious about why you make sense. Tell me about it. What are you afraid would happen if you let go of your anger, if you let go of your resentment, if you let go of the identity of being a victim? What would happen? And just, you can ask thinking parts also to give you space. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just a receptiveness. It's like that part is just talking to you like another person, and you have no idea what they're going to say before they say it. And this part can say, again, I don't want to put words in that part's mouth, but just really listen to them about what would happen if they didn't hold on to that. And that will lead you to perhaps what can be done to help meet that concern. So if they say, um, you would be very vulnerable to attack, you can say, when did that happen? And they might point to a past moment that they're stuck in, that they really want you to go back to in the time travel piece of IFS and witness what happened to them and what this part is protecting you from, so that you can appreciate it even more and get permission to go back there and witness and reparent and redo that scene, and then take them into the present and really update them and then see if they're ready at that point to release their burden of resentment, of anger, of the identity of victim. And they may not be. If they're not, you just get curious about their concern. What are you afraid would happen if you did release this? Or how do you, they might say, this has been my identity all my life. I don't even know who I am without being a victim, right? And so you can propose experiments like, well, what if you just release 25% of the burden and see how it feels? Or what if you put the burden in some kind of lockbox or something and put it aside and see how you feel, and you can always get it back if you want to. Again, the self is never trying to steamroll over parts, have control over, power over, force anything. It's just trying to give hope, right? What if you could pretend that you weren't a victim? What if you could have a persona, like if you didn't have that on you, what would happen? Who would you be? Can you experiment with that? And again, there's a negotiation, right? It's not you've got to get rid of this burden or else our system's doomed. Again, that's evidence of a manager part, and you want to turn toward them, really give them appreciation, ask if they'll give you space, if they ever, come in during the work. But if you can go toward them and really negotiate, right? You might say, what if you try to get rid of 50% and see what happens? And they say, no, 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 that doesn't feel good. That's too scary for me. Okay, what about 25%? No. What if you just release 10%? They're like, okay, yeah, that feels okay. Right? So you can negotiate with them and see what genuinely feels okay with them. And gradually, especially with the relationship between this victim part or any part and that yourself, who genuinely has no judgment, no agenda, only pure love and acceptance as they are. It's in the this loving gaze of the self that they're gradually able to experiment and release a little bit and see what happens. Because, for example, my parts will say, well, what if in this moment somebody is cruel to you? Maybe I need to keep holding this anger because it's a defense for me. And honestly, anger um, is not doesn't necessarily have to be a burden. Anger is a natural uh, force within us that allows us to have self-value and hold up healthy boundaries. So this part might say, I don't want to fully let go of my anger because there's an aspect of it that's actually really healthy for me. So you can talk about um, what that looks like, right? Because in a self-led system, yourself will be the leader, but you'll have access to the parts who hold anger, to the parts who hold sadness, to the parts who are hypervigilant and have some fear. And they won't be leading the show, but they will have a voice in the system to inform yourself so that you can set healthy boundaries and creatively create the life that you want that values you, and maybe create distance with people who are harmful to you. But I was going to say that when myself has asked parts like that, what are you afraid would happen? They'll say, I'm afraid that people in front of me are going to abuse me and be cruel to me and criticize me like people have in the past. And I'll say that myself will say, I can't guarantee that that won't happen. But if it does, I will be here for you. And I won't force you to be with that person. We'll create a healthy boundary once they show their protective parts are harming us. And we will create distance, and I will comfort you, and I will be there for you. And as you develop that loving relationship between the part and the self, they begin to trust that. And then they can take more risks in the world. They can put things out to people and see how they handle them. And maybe the person's protective parts don't handle it well, and we create distance. Or maybe they do handle it well, and we offer them some more, and we move closer to that person. but we can become more of a self-led person that has confidence and courage in the world because the parts can trust the self to be there for them no matter what. So I hope that's helpful. If you have any questions about that or you want to share your experiences, please leave them in the comments below.